welcome to all our viewers in Nigeria and around the world to Business Point here on Global Television, your hub for topical discussions around business, government policies, tech and innovation. I am Queen Agaba. Recent discussions have emerged regarding a proposed ban on 60,000-litre petroleum tankers in Nigeria. The National Association of Road Transport Owners, NATO, has expressed concerns that such a ban could lead to significant financial losses, estimating that approximately 2,000 trucks each, valued at around 150 million naira, would be affected, totaling an investment of about 300 billion naira. NATO emphasizes that these substantial investments should not be rendered obsolete and advocates for a balanced solution that addresses safety concerns, and without jeopardizing the livelihoods of those in the transport sectors. While acknowledging the tragic incidents involving large tankers, NATO argues that factors such as poor road conditions, inadequate vehicle maintenance, and driver behavior contribute more significantly to these incidents than the size of the tankers themselves. They stress the importance of addressing these underlying issues to enhance road safety effectively. The association is also seeking a collaborative approach with regulatory bodies to find a solution that ensures public safety while preserving the investment and jobs within the petroleum transportation industry. The question now is, how is this fuel tanker debt crisis going to impact logistics and business operations, as well as the questions NATO is raising? Joining me on the program to dissect this topic this morning will be my colleague Uyi Agbomofebe, who will help us with his perspective on fuel tanker debt crisis and the impact on logistics and business operations after this break. Please stay with us. I'm now joined with my colleague Uyi Agbomofebe, who will help us also make better sense with these recent discussions and happenings. Many thanks for joining me on the program.
Well, as you know, it's always a delight to be here and have this sort of impromptu conversations, right?
Yeah, really impromptu conversations. Well, you know, the logistics sector in Nigeria is facing major challenges, particularly with the debt of the debts that the transport sector, tanker owners are owing, proposed 300 million naira. And, you know, NATO, the Association of Tanker Owners, have come out to say that, while, you know, there have been talks around the 60,000 litre tankers not being a major problem or posing a significant challenges, that there are other factors such as bad roads and sometimes the welfare of the drivers as well contributing to some of these nasty accidents and incidences that we've had. What are your takes regarding this?
Okay, first of all, again, it's a delight to be here, right? You don't want to run away from the fact that there are people who are curious and they're probably asking, what's the correlation, by the way, between petrol for the end user, which is the everyday Nigerian, right, and these tanker issues. There's already a proposition as it stands right now, right, for 60,000 litre tankers to be banned, right? Of course, you and I know we have thousands of them on Nigerian roads, right? So these stakeholders, critical stakeholders, I should say, are now concerned that if that ban goes through, a big if, it is going to create a gap, and one of the fallouts will be a loss of about 300 billion. That's their own estimates. Maybe we're going to need the experts to help us crunch the numbers and see what really the data is saying, right? But that's what we can do on the program today, apparently. But then we also want to look at what is it that are the real issues? Because we have been here time and again on global television to talk about the incessant explosion of tankers. All right, we have acknowledged bad roads, for example, as a factor. We've talked about recklessness by some drivers, some of the tanker drivers themselves. We've talked about rickety tankers that are out of shape, tankers that should be ideally off-road. So the factors are numerous. As a matter of fact, somebody had even said off camera that, look, there are also some dubious criminally minded drivers who will divert the products. For example, the point the person is making is there's 33,000 liters of fuel that is supposed to take, let's say, from Warri Refinery to Enugu. Alright, so what do? You take it all the way from Warri, you get to, let's say, Oka in Anambra, you divert. Out of 33,000 liters, right, you divert, let's say, 25,000. What are you left with? 8,000. And then you're driving all the way now from Anambra to Enugu, supposedly to deliver 33,000. And then somehow you find this claim, execute that claim, and you just allow the tanker fall sideways. And then it spills, of course, as suspected, or as always been the case, people come to scoop one thing leads to another, there's a spark, and then the rest is history. And now, the assumption is this guy took 33,000 liters of fuel from Warri Refinery, from Warri Depot, all the way to Enugu, and he lost everything on account of the accident. Not knowing that 25,000 had already, prior to that incident, been diverted somewhere in the middle. Well, we can say that as hypothetical, but again, it's somebody's opinion of careful analysis of what we're saying the last couple of years. So you have that as a concern. Now, all of this would matter naturally because at the end of the day, these are the issues around which the price of petrol pivots. That's where it affects everyday Nigerian. So what are the alternatives we can do? Some people say, well, we need the regulatory agencies within the Ministry of Petroleum Resources to be more stringent with their measures, to be more, if you like, effective regulation-wise and all of that. But is this the first time we're speaking that kind of grammar? I'm not so sure. Others have said, look, the only solution we need now ultimately is fix the roads. Once you fix the roads, the rest is history, and everything will fall in place. And then there are those who have been very sensitive enough, Queen, to say, why is it always this Niger State axis around the Suleja corridor, and so on and so forth? Nobody has been able to provide very helpful answers, beyond the fact that, well, that road in itself is particularly bad, that place is narrow, it's not motorable, it's not passable, blah, 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 blah. But again, it's a very critical highlight of the many problems in the oil and gas sector.
Okay, with all of these problems that we've had, how can we, before we look at the implications, because there are many implications to the ban of this, how it's going to affect businesses, but have we really explored other ways, to better safeguard tanker drivers, to also create awareness as to prevention of these incidences, just mitigating of these issues?
Right. You see, somebody once said there's nothing you want to achieve that someone else hasn't already accomplished. The only thing is you have to borrow these, learn from them, and maybe the domesticate for their own purpose, right? So the question you're asking yourself, Queen, is Nigeria the only country that has crude and produces petrol? The answer is obvious, capital no. So in the Middle East, for example, in other parts of Africa, if you move up to Europe, for instance, how do they move petrol? You need to answer that. And then you come back home and say, okay, let's domesticate, for example. How can we make us indigenous? In such a way that, like you said, avoid all these loss of lives, loss of products, destruction of petrol tankers and so on and so forth. Who's one of the experts here? I mean, these are people with robust background in the sector who say, look, work your pipelines, because they say corrosion, wear and tear have all happened to our piping in this country, all right? So you've got to fix that. I've spoken with somebody who is is front and center in the oil and gas sector, all right, off television, and he said, look, some of these pipelines have not been changed in decades, not in years, in decades. So who is responsible for that? Who is checking? Who is doing due diligence? Who is doing maintenance? Who is supervising this so-called turnaround maintenance we hear every now and then that usually will cost billions or sometimes tens of billions? These are issues we have to resolve. So in 2025, is this still ideal to move petrol or petroleum products generally using tankers? We have to ask that. How do they move these things across Europe? How does Russia, for example, move gas and or what have you, all the way from Russia across the entire Europe, where we have over 20 countries and all that? So these are the questions we should be asking. Is it embarrassing that in a matter of weeks you're hearing multiple accidents around the same corridor, just in Niger State, all right, next day is in the east, the day that follows is Jigawa State, and every other part of the country. So the question is, the answer is simple. Those who have been saddled with this responsibility know exactly what to do. Look at the pictures you see on screen. They look very gory and they look very uninspiring for obvious reasons. So, regulatory agencies, for example, this is not just about saying government. If you say government, that's ambiguous. So, what should the regulatory agencies saddled with this responsibility be doing? Ask yourself, 25 years into a new century, should we be moving petrol using tankers? More so, this kind of rickety tankers. So you want to specifically also be curious to ask, who decides whether a tanker is fit to be on the road in the first instance?
That's a question.
Right. So those are the challenges.
Okay. Now, this ban on the 60,000 liter tankers, 60,000 is a lot.
Yeah, exactly, yes. And they were trucking from one end of the country to another.
You know how efficient that must have been distributing fuel to all parts of the state. What are the possible challenges? How is this going to affect businesses? This crisis.
If the ban were to go through.
Yes, if it were to go through, how would these affect businesses, and what other alternatives do we begin to look at?
Okay, here's the thing. Let's talk about, first of all, the ramifications or the implications, right? There are livelihoods that revolve around these 60,000 liter tankers. You can't take that away. First of all, people had spent money to purchase these tankers, whether they bought it a year ago or 20 years ago. They spent money, so it's investment and it's core business for them. And let's also not forget that, like many other sectors, like agriculture, like telecoms, like tech, and what have you, the petroleum sector also has this value chain uniqueness, which means if you remove tankers or you remove a section of the tankers, like the 60,000 liter tankers we're talking about, it will naturally have an impact which will create a gap. So how do you deal with that, or what will be the implications? One of the implications is that jobs will be lost, because if you have, for example, 100 drivers who have been driving 60,000 liter trucks the entire time, what do you do for them? How do you engage them meaningfully at that point so that there's more like a seamless transition? You have to answer that question. So that's an implication. Don't forget that most of these persons also have dependents, those who depend on them for livelihood, for sustenance, and what have you. So you have to answer that. You also need to now address the issue of the gap that is created on account of this ban, in light of the fact that there's going to be some sort of drag in the efficiency chain of product delivery. I'll give you an example, very simple. So if you had, let's say, 25 trucks, all right, so loading petrol from Benin depot and bringing all the way to, let's say, Abia State. And out of those 25, none are 60,000 liter capacity tankers. And you remove them, leaving you 16, I'm sure. So what happens? How can these 16 now do their own part and still make up for the 16,000 liter capacity tankers that have been removed from the chain? Those are the issues. So there will be gap. It's pretty much like a job, a task that ordinarily should be performed by 25 persons, and then you knock off 9 persons for whatever reason, ill health, unavailability, and what have you. It means that these 16 persons must find a way to deliver the task of 25 persons. So it's going to have a reverberating effect. But I'm not so sure that the stakeholders are as interested at this point in answering these critical questions that you raised as they are more engaged in fighting.
So looking at what policies do you think we need to put in place, alternative measures to ensure that if this ban were to go through,
right,
there will be some sort of relief, the impact will not be felt as much as it would if nothing was done about it?
You see, I mean, right from when I started hosting business programs, one of the things I was supposed to tell you is that Nigeria is not short of policies. In fact, I will tell you, Nigeria has, just like laws, they have some of the finest policies in the world, but the problem is the implementation of those policies, the follow through with those policies, and then dealing with the challenge of policy summer thought as we always have, right? Now, to answer this question very directly, one of the first things you've got to do is to understand that these kind of challenge will need interagency collaboration to fix it, which means that you can't have this conversation in the first instance if you're not able to bring in the Ministry of Transportation. You've got to bring them in because you're talking about tankers that practically run on our roads. And look at the quality of the roads in any case. Are they even tough enough? Are they built for this kind of tankers? I mean, this is one of the big elephants in the room. Again, at that point, you're bringing in already, directly and indirectly, Ministry of Works, because they are the ones responsible for all these federal roads. So who is answering that question on that end? And you're asking yourself, the agencies within the ambit of the Ministry of Petroleum Resources, what are they also doing in this regard? Has there ever been any time the last 20 years? And how many times has that happened that you had Ministry of Works, Ministry of Transportation, at least one agency under the Ministry of Petroleum Resources sit in one room, share one table, and have a dialogue strategically about these issues? But what are you saying the whole time? It is blame, game, walk, passing. Ask yourself, I mean, you've spoken to people about this issues time and again. When last did you see somebody being held accountable for these things? It's just a matter of, well, maybe this type of information comes on air, it says a thing or two, a spokesperson from Ministry of Petroleum Resources will come, maybe on the pages of newspaper to say a thing or two, and then what else? Nigerians fight over the issues, and then as journalists or broadcasters, we come here, we talk about these issues, and nobody, not one person is held accountable, because the fact of the matter is, somebody hasn't done their job over time. That's the basic reason we are where we are right now.
Okay, interesting. And we'll have to, at this point, we'll have to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll wrap up the conversation. Please stay with us. Many thanks for staying with us on the program. If you've just joined us, this is Business Point here on Global Television, your hub for topical discussions around business, government policies, tech, and innovation. And before the break, we have been speaking with my colleague, Uyi Agbomofobe, who has been helping us make better sense of the fuel tanker debt crisis and its impact on logistics and business operations. Throughout the conversations, we've raised very salient points, I think, dynamics, angles to this story. What's the way forward? What are the questions should we be asking now? Because we've talked about how this is going to affect, tanker drivers, businesses, tanker owners, and all of that. In all of this, what should we do? What's the way forward?
Somebody asked this question, just I know we're short of time. The person said, can't there be alternatives? If we were to say, let's not ban these 60,000 litre capacity tankers, can we not have alternatives? Of course we can. It's just for those who manage these processes to think outside of the box, to be a bit more creative and innovative about these things. Because you see, you also need to know that we have not really prioritized safety in this country, particularly safety of those who are on the road delivering these products. I think for the most part, for decades in this country, what we're saying in light of safety is bias in favor of those who work at the rigs, those who work in gas projects and all of that. We've not asked ourselves very critically and with some sincerity what exactly happens to Queen Agaba when she puts a tanker on the road from Abuja to Lokoja or to Ilorin, for example. We have not asked those questions, and that's why it has taken this long for us to be having this elementary, as I'll call it, kind of conversation. So you have to deal with that. But we also need to go forward and understand that we can make money, do real business in this sector, and still balance that with safety consciousness. Is very important, because you see, these lives that are lost are not just numbers. They are real human beings, people's parents, people's children, people's breadwinners, and all that. So the question is, 25 years into this new century, can we not rethink this process and create alternatives, whether you eventually go on to ban these tankers or not? And that question we must take the next few days, weeks, or months to answer.
Thank you. I like how you put it, that we can still make money and balance safety measures. I think safety should be paramount for every business owner, whether tanker or whatever it is that you are doing.
Right.
Thank you very much for joining me on the program and for your contributions to this topic. We look forward to having you again.
Right.
Well, this is where we draw the curtains here on Business Point. Thank you for joining us on the program. And don't forget to follow us across all social media platforms using @GlobalTVNG and other handles now showing on your screen. I'm Queen Agaba. Thank you for watching, and see you again.